Hey everybody, what is going on? This is Scott Garber back in the saddle of the ProFluence Sports Podcast, where we are highlighting founders, investors, executives across the global sport landscape. Today I'm excited to welcome Stan to the show, co-founder, CEO of Rocapine, with a mission to turn smartphones from a source of addiction into a source of well-being. You guys know it's not my story to tell. Stan, the man, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hey Scott, good. Yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me.
No, we're excited to have you here, Stan. You guys have been ripping and running and really changing the way that we think about these smartphones. So today we're excited to go ahead and learn how you guys have cut through a lot of noise in the AI market, how you're building apps at scale to rethink the way we use the phone, and what is the playbook of the future to be able to go ahead and give the end user exactly what they want when they want it. Stan, as always, here on the ProFluence Pod, it's important to understand who you are. What is your journey? How the heck did you lean into and start to build a venture studio? So give all the listeners a little bit of context on your journey to now building this current endeavor that you're on.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm French, so based in Paris with a part of the team, and the rest of the team is in Nantes in France and in Barcelona in Spain. I'm the father of a 2-year-old daughter. I started my career in quite classical and boring strategy consulting for 5 years in Morocco and in France. And then after 5 years, I joined the exciting mobile industry and was working in mobile gaming at Voodoo, which you might know as a publisher of mobile games.
Yep.
So a publisher which is behind famous titles like Helix Jump, Paper.io. I think they have like more than 7 billion downloads on their games. And I spent 3 years at Voodoo working in the product team. I did some exciting stuff. And after a couple of years, I started to realize that I was working in a fun industry and I was kind of excited to go to work, but there was a problem, which was like, what is the purpose and what is the impact of what I do with my day-to-day job? And am I doing some good to this world? And I think the answer was not super positive. And that's how we started thinking about creating Rocapine with JG, my co-founders, and how we ended up a few months after that, leaving our jobs and founding Rocapine, which is a wellness apps publisher.
I think it's so great, I'm sure a lot of listeners and myself, Stan, wake up and ask that question, right? In a world that's moving so fast, what's my purpose? Why am I doing it? And now I have all this great information at my fingertips, but seemingly if I can't access the right information at the right time, then it's just sort of noise, right? And so I'm really curious, diving right into your guys' journey. You went from $0 to 6 million ARR in 9 months, which is a crazy ride. We talked to a lot of founders that are just trying to find product market fit. What happened within the business that made this kind of velocity possible? Give us a little insight into that growth journey for you guys.
Yes, I'm totally eager to discuss the figures, but first of all, I would like to give you a bit more information on the playbook and how we brought the idea to this world, which is basically like your phone knows that you did not sleep last night, your watch knows that you're stressed, and still we keep scrolling. And we scroll more than 5 hours a day. And so
Yep.
if you look like the human life spending 5 hours a day, it means that more than 15 hours of your awake time in life will be spent on your smartphone, which is not necessarily a negative thing. If you think that you're finding interesting information on your smartphone or you're unlocking great experiences that you can have in real life by doing so, but it's not the case, unfortunately, for like 99% of the time that you spend on your smartphone. So initially, the reflection was technology was supposed to make us smarter, and I think it used to work. Like during the 20th century, the average IQ was progressing continuously until I think 15, 20 years ago, so pretty much when smartphone appeared. But it's not the case anymore, and we are more and more stressed, and we are more and more addicts and incapable of focusing on things. I think the average children diagnosed with ADHD in the US doubled over the last 20 years.
Yep.
And the main reason for that is that the majority of apps on which you spend time on your smartphone are built around addiction patterns, which are basically we want to keep you addict and we want to keep you scrolling and focusing on endless scrolls that have like very, very little interest. So I think one of the initial thoughts when we founded Rocapine was we are going to make things differently and we are going to make apps that genuinely deliver value to the user so that you can measure in your real life that the value proposition that you marketed is there. And if you're making a nutrition app, that your nutrition is actually doing better. And our KPI is not the time that you spend on this app, which is usually the source of the problem. Like the reason why they build addiction and they build apps around those patterns is because they monetize the time that you spend on your phone. It's exactly like the TV business 20 years ago, which was the attention economy. So in our business, we decided to go with a completely different way, which means no ads, because ads depend on the average duration of the sessions of the user, but which means the subscription business, which we believe would be way more aligned with the user interest because you remain subscribed to a program if you see that this program is actually deliver value. So I think that's the very first innovation that we bring to this market is that we do different products that are built with a product playbook, which generally relies on we want you to come back every day on the app and we want to build the app around some kind of daily check-in feature because we can actually personalize the program and the experience that is made to the user on a daily basis. And that's one of the things that AI is enabling. So that's the very first innovation with our system is making better products that all the user because they deliver value. And the second part of the answer that we came up with, and that's probably the one which is going to answer your traction and figure question, is the industrialization model. So instead of just choosing one single product, one single value proposition that we would focus on, if you look on the market, in the wellness apps market, there are like thousands of apps that are released every month on the stores, and there is less than 1% of those apps which is going to be a success, which is going to make more than 1 million annual revenue. So if we were just to choose a single focus, it would like very, very, very likely fail. I think if we stayed on the very first app that we developed, that would be a failure because we weren't trained enough and we obviously made a lot of mistakes. But what we chose as the model, which was the second innovation we brought to this market, as instead of making one app, we did 100 apps and we tested 100 apps in the first year. And so the reason why we managed to have such traction was because we came up with a different playbook and better products, and because we came up with this approach, which was like build something very fast, test it, and if that works, we are going to spend more time and add more devs to this app and only launch the very few where we saw a great potential.
This is so interesting, and I appreciate you breaking down the evolution of the playbook, which then backs into traction, Stan. I'm curious, as we watch the venture studio model come out now with agentic tools being able to go ahead and really, give us the velocity we need to go ahead and hit the market with a lot of different shots on goal. Give me some insight into, sort of the evolution of venture, right? Typically we would, try and find a great operator. Tech was the moat, and then we would put the resources to try and go ahead and build around it. With you guys building with such velocity, what are the benchmarks that you look at for early indication that this product is going to be successful? And then how do you make the decision if it's not to go ahead and kill it and move on to the next one? Super curious, like what is that internal decision making?
So first of all, it's a very, very iterative model. So I guess we changed 100 times the playbook and what are the KPIs that we are looking for until we find the perfect playbook. And we will never find the perfect playbook, but the playbook will keep getting better and better. So the way it works, and obviously we inspired from one of the most industrialized mobile industry I knew, which was the mobile gaming model, which was 10 to 15 years ahead of wellness apps when it comes to velocity, was basically to break down the hit-making machine into the different phases, and at each of these phases, define what was the important KPI. So typically, to start, we come up with an idea, and we have plenty of ideas that we are discussing every week. And we do the first gating, which is just pitching the idea among ourselves and validating the ones for which we have the highest level of conviction, because we know that we have those proof points and we believe that we can actually bring value to the user with this idea. Then you build a prototype, which is basic version of the app, but which is getting more and more deep as we progress and we implement more AI and we improve the technology that we build, leveraging what AI allows us to do. So at this stage, that's what we call the product market fit stage. We want to validate whether it's a value proposition that resonates with the user, and we want to validate whether people are actually willing to commit and to subscribe to such products. So our model does rely on performance marketing. There is one way to reach the top charts, especially in the US, if you want to scale a new product, which is performance marketing. So advertising around your product. The organic playbook is almost impossible now that there is so much volume on the App Store. And so the one way that we know that works is performance marketing. So we want to validate whether the value proposition you're advertising is something that resonates with users and is not already completely saturated, because maybe there are players that are around and have a much better product than yours, and there is not enough innovation in your product to find a gap in the market. So that would be like the first thing. And so we look at what is the cost per install, what is the cost per trial started, and how much people start a trial with this app because it resonates. And then there is the whole playbook, and we add more devs, we validate that it works well until we decide to launch an app, which means that we start a 3 to 6 months sprint working on the product and on the marketing engine and trying to scale to the top charts. And then it's a never-ending story, because the top apps that are on the charts, they are obviously people that keep improving the experience and making sure that we deliver value to the user in the long run.
Interesting. Now, I want to go into the structural side of this, Stan, right? With you guys pushing out 400, the idea of pushing out 400 new mobile applications. Talk to me about sort of the middle layer, right? Like the structure. Are each one of these their own independent businesses that live underneath like the larger umbrella, and then we attach an operator? Like, I'm really curious, like, as you move this playbook down the funnel, like, how do you actually take them from prototypes to then like fully scalable businesses, and like structurally how this whole thing comes together? Because I think this is a wave of where, we watch large private equity starting to build AI prototypes to see like if they can replicate it. We're starting to see this motion more and more. I'm curious how you guys think about the ones that are catching traction, how you take them from mobile app to true business.
So this is where our model gets a bit more technical. So basically, we are both what we call an app studio and a publisher. So by studio, it means that we have teams internally. We are a small team, but of very talented people, which are building apps and launching our own Rocapine apps. And by publisher, we mean that we also work with indie studios, indie partners that are usually a product lead and a developer, so 2 people team in general, sometimes 3, sometimes just 1, which work with Rocapine as a publisher, meaning that they handle the day-to-day product management. We help building the engine, identifying what are the segments where there is potential, and leveraging our moat in the end, because they would have way lower chances to succeed without our moat. And we handle the marketing, meaning that we handle the distribution of this app, because we have the whole playbook and capacity to do so. So we have those 2 approaches, which are around 50-50 at the moment, because we obviously have less people internally, but we go way faster for now than most of our partners. But we are also trying to upskill our partners and to give them the tools to go faster and to build prototype and to build very robust apps by building this tech enabler. So we do both, and the publishing model is under a profit sharing model.
Interesting. Makes total sense. Like, and I imagine it's one sort of feeds another. Like, there's a really nice, like, you can learn what's going on, then you take sort of your shots in the market and owned and operated one, and it creates a nice bifurcated business that ultimately helps you sort of create this, like your larger mission, right? Which is time well spent on a screen versus just time on a screen. Am I thinking about that right, Stan?
Yeah, definitely. That's what we call the moat, which is basically we didn't go from 0 to 6 million ARR in a year just by getting lucky. We did because we did a first hit, and then from those learnings that we replicated in the second hit, we made a stronger second hit and then a stronger third hit, and it compounds. That's basically the model.
And to think, you've been in this game for a long time. This wasn't possible 5 years ago, right? Like the advancements of AI tools have allowed this to happen at such velocity that, we're seeing that you guys are rewarded for having systems and processes in place and then using the tools to optimize what you're doing. And I think iteration, you keep coming back to it. The ability to iterate will define the winners and the losers of this next phase. I think like a lot of people are iterating slow, which is, creating a chasm or a gap between the folks that are breaking out like yourself and then like the folks that are trying to solve one problem. Stan, I'm curious, right? Like you have a really nice sort of well-rounded background suited to go make this successful. But when we think about changing behavior, right, and you guys aren't taking the attention approach, you're taking like the optimize approach. How do you actually measure time well spent beyond just a subscription model and they continue to renew? Break that down for me, because that's a new way of thinking about the engaged user on the phone versus just like, eyeballs.
Yeah, so I think there are two parts of the answer. The first part would be the business KPIs. So on a day-to-day, what are the indicators that we look to know that the product is improving and that we are going in the right direction? And the second part is the mission-driven approach, which is we did define with the team what was our mission, which is to help people feel more alive by crafting unique wellness experiences. And how do we measure that people are genuinely more alive? For which we did define also a mission KPI. So the first one, the answer to the first one would be, we look obviously the marketing metrics, which are like the return on ad spend, because you advertise, there is a certain cost for showing ads to people, then they subscribe, and then they remain in the app and they remain subscribed for duration, etc. So it's obviously the subscription duration. And one of the drivers to keep people engaged in a subscription is that they are engaged with the app and the program, so that they are coming back to the app. And so on the day-to-day, we try to improve the retention after 1 day. So whenever they open the app, we want them to open the app tomorrow because they had this moment where they genuinely saw the value that you are bringing, and they know that if tomorrow they log in, they do their check-in again, they will have this value delivered. And they are the more long-term KPIs, which is after 30 days, I want them to remain in the app. And that's basically how we defined our mission KPI, which is how do we measure that people feel more alive? And we estimate that they feel more alive if they've been using the app for more than 30 days and they still come back to the app after 30 days. So if they are here on the first day, it's good, and it's likely that they come back on the next day. If they are here after 1 week, it's a good indicator that they are starting to build a habit. But if they are still interacting with your core feature after 30 days, it means that they genuinely built a habit and it seems to deliver. Otherwise, they would probably have churned. And that's where we estimate that we change someone's life, and we aim to change 40 million lives in the coming 5 years.
Thinking cool is this, Stan? And it's really neat, right? When we're able to go ahead and what makes us more human? How do we use this as a modality to be able to go ahead and feel more alive? That reframing is incredible. Now, let's talk about this, right? Because everybody has a very personalized wellness journey, right? Like it's not a cookie cutter, which it's traditionally been, right? We try and fit everybody into this box. How are you guys leveraging agentic tools, right? And being able to go ahead and customize or personalize that journey through these apps? And then sort of phase two of that, Stan, is these are great modalities to go ahead and learn our end user and build subscription businesses. But we also understand that it's building these, we're able to structure the data in a really clean way. So I'm curious, as you start to understand such a wide breadth of human behavior, what are you guys doing behind the scenes with all these apps running, feeding a lot of data? How are you leveraging sort of a cross-section of all of these different data points to help fuel where you guys are taking, the next build? So sort of two-part question there.
Yes, I think there are two ways we use AI. And so I would say the first way AI is super useful in our model is in what we call the engine. So the ability to build the experience, the ability to scale it by making creatives, advertising on various networks and social networks, etc. So that's what we call the engine, and we use a lot the AI in the engine for every bricks of the engine to make it more and more performant and relevant. And then there is the AI that we use in the app and the data that we gather in the app. And as we are touching upon wellness, you know that user data is a very important topic, and you don't want your personal fitness data to be accessible by anyone. You want it to remain very private and not used by AI algorithm, etc. So on this aspect, we try to build experience that rely on personalization. So for that, we need AI, but we don't want to storage your data. We don't want to have access to your data and to know that Scott has been doing sports 3 times a week. The only thing that we want to know is users that look like Scots. Are they using the app? What is their average retention, etc. So we look more data on an anonymized way to try to improve the product in general, and we are very careful with data privacy. I think we haven't discussed much about what are the apps that we do, but one of our apps is the women cycle tracker, and you know that Flow, which is the leading women period app, has issues with data storage. So one of the things that we do, and that I think no other player in this market has, is, for instance, on this app, the data is fully encrypted. So there is a QR code that only you have, and without this QR code, we cannot do anything basically. We just see a code and we don't know what's behind it. And it's super important when it touches to some tricky health or wellness topic, not to storage data and not to share this data with any third parties.
And look at and that's where I was going to take it, right? Because with such velocity, when we think about governance, when we think about security, I was curious at what point do you start to over-index and go from vibe-coded product, and I don't want to just put it in that bucket, but quick prototype to find product market fit to now we found traction. Are you guys sort of taking that secure over-index on governance approach from the beginning, or is it like once we find viability, then we'll start to implement more resources to make sure it's secure? I'm always curious because we see a lot of innovators come out with quick to market product, but it's not scalable to enterprise and it's not secure. And I know Europe has different laws and regulations than the US, but give me a little insight to how and when do you put the importance on the security side of each application?
So there is never data security issues with our apps, and even with a very early prototype, what we would just do is not storage any user data. So we make sure that there is no bad usage of your user data.
Yep.
But just to give you a bit perspective on the devs. So when we started Rocapine, we would be able to come up with a very first prototype. So it's basically a value proposition that is marketed to the user, in-app onboarding, and a basic first version of the features of the app in 2 months. So that was a bit less than 2 years ago. And that was already way better than the average in the market, which would be 6 months to a year before there is any product market fit test. And I think after a few months, we managed to reduce it to 3 weeks, which was at the time a very strong success. And after 6 months, I think we did one in 10 days, which was very, very strong success. And it's been 6 months that we build app prototypes in less than a day. And 6 months ago, it was a very basic and templatized product, and now it's very, very strong experiences, way better than the usual apps that people know that are the top chart apps when it comes to the quality of the experience, of the micro interaction, of the layer of personalization, etc. And it's a combination, obviously, of leveraging a lot of AI and using that efficiently in an engine that we built. So basically, we built the tech tools that enable us to release that early with the right level of quality, etc. And I think it's also essentially the 5 to 10% human craft and taste that we bring to the app that makes it unique. And that's basically the thing that AI will never be able to replicate. So to do one very single task, AI will keep doing that better and better, but they won't be able to do the whole engine of what Rocapine is building. And you will always detect, I mean, at least I do always detect when an app is vibe coded with little human test and involvement into this, because you recognize the pattern of AI. And that's what very fast people start to find ugly, because they've seen it thousands of times.
I was gonna say it's you've seen one, you've seen them all, right? And like that's I love the way you broke that down there. I think it makes a ton of sense, and it's a wonderful illustration, Stan, of how to use the tool and then bridge them back to real human application, right? Sometimes I think it's like just because we can build it, people build it, but there's no way to bring it back to like, how does this make me a better person? How does this make society better and elevated and more healthy? And you guys have really figured out that way. As we turn the corner here, I want to pick your brain as a founder for a second, if that's all right. With you guys launching, late 2024, you're already into your A round. You've launched a product that's done $1 million in ARR. I'm curious, everyone's trying to raise money and sort of leverage AI. When you were talking to investors, did they buy into traction or did they buy into the system that you guys were rolling out? And if you could elaborate on where you found success in raising that capital, I think our founders could benefit to learn from.
Yeah, so it's more early 2026, I think, because we raised initially late 2024, but that was a small round. That's before we actually started Rocapine. So we did pitch an idea.
Got it.
And I think at this time, what resonated was the perspective, which is like mobile gaming is super advanced. Wellness apps are basically the stone age of consumer apps in general, in terms of velocity, industrialization. So it was more the idea of bringing some playbook and some know that's worked elsewhere to this market. And when we raised our Series A earlier in 2026, I think it's a different story. There was obviously a lot of interest on the traction. So we've had very strong traction. And it was surely a combination of execution, having the right vision, and obviously a bit of luck to be at the right moment and to be doing the right thing. But I think what really interested the investors and the main points where they would challenge us, and I think it's the right thing, was like the retention of the app, which is basically of the apps in general. So which is basically, okay, you have a model that works, you can find strong ideas that are marketable and that you manage to market up to a certain point, but does that work in the long run? Like, do you actually build a habit with those apps, and are you going to be there next year and in the next decade? And I think it's a very good question to ask as a VC investor, because in the end, that's what matters. So there are some early proof points, but are we building something robust? And obviously, the answer was yes for some of the apps and no for some other of the apps. And our job is to be able to identify what are the right ones that have potential in the long run and on which we should focus the efforts, and also to keep scaling the model to find new value propositions that resonate with the users and that could become the category leaders.
Interesting. So last question, and then we're going to go rapid fire, stay on a couple, and then I'm going to let you get back to your busy building day. As you build these apps and they hit different thresholds, with you guys being a venture studio, is there an exit strategy to this, or are you looking to build sort of more of like a holding company and the ones that work? Give me some insights to the one that have caught traction and how you're actually driving liquidity beyond just the subscription model and normal business. What is the trajectory as you find a business that's working to then either have exit velocity or hold it underneath? Like, how do you guys think about it?
So that's the usual VC investor question. Obviously, that's not a question I genuinely I'm asking myself, meaning that I'm here and I'm building something which I believe is going to change lives. So I don't see why I would want to exit. But obviously, if you need to get finance, your investor needs to exit their investment at a certain point. So you need to ask yourself this question. I think there are different models in the market which prove that there are various ways it could work. So first of all, we are scaling, and we are scaling profitably. So we are not just wasting investor money. Every penny that is invested into Rocapine into Rocapine's engine is generating more than 1 penny. So it's generating genuine profit. So first of all, if you have a model that works and that is generating profit, you don't necessarily need to sell or to raise the next round, which doesn't mean that you shouldn't raise the next one, but just means that you keep your options open. Secondly, we've seen some IPOs. Obviously, Duolingo was a tricky one because it used to be super well valued, and then early 2026 it went down, and so investors start to wonder whether consumer apps is right for the IPO playbook. Luckily, there is Bending Spoon, which is doing his IPO recently, which seems to go well. And Bending Spoon is kind of one of the ancestors of Rocapine on a different vertical. So we do that in wellness. They did in productivity with some differences, but that would look a bit like Rocapine's model, which is a good proof point for investors, for which IPO is, I think, always is the answer in the end for this question.
Very cool. I love that, right? And it's interesting in the health and wellness space. Like we've watched some specifically more on the sporting side. Like we haven't really had much exit velocity, right? And like we haven't watched IPO become like the actual path of exit. And so it's really interesting to hear this newer model and sort of what the North Star looks like, but without undermining that the goal, the North Star, is to impact 40 million lives and turn this thing into more optimized wellness instead of doom scrolling and sort of watching the brain rot happen over and over. And Stan, that's what gets me most excited, right? Like you guys are taking the technology and figuring out how to humanize it in a responsible and ethical way, while also driving profits. And I think that's the name of the game when we always thought about business, not just how long can I get you on my screen, how much can I monetize you, and then send you away feeling really empty and sort of unhealthy. So kudos to you. Love everything that you're doing. Rapid fire question here for you, and then I'm going to let you get back to your busy day. Stan, we have all these AI tools at our fingertips, right? Let's go ahead and think about what is your favorite AI tool that you're using today?
We are very fond of the Claude suite at Rocapine, meaning that I'm always jumping between my Claude project, Claude code on Cursor, designs that are making on Claude designs. So there is a lot of Anthropic in the stack. Obviously, we use all those tools, but a lot of Anthropic.
I love it. All right, two more. One wellness habit that had the biggest impact on your life.
I think it is enabling an apps blocker on my phone. After a certain amount of time spent on social media, it gets blocked, so I cannot scroll anymore, and that's how I fight this bad behavior.
Love it. Okay, last one. If Rocapine disappeared tomorrow, what lasting idea would you hope the industry keeps moving forward?
That's a good one. I think it's what we bring in personalization of the experience, meaning that every journey is different, and you can build products that take this different into account, by opposition to what are still the leading players of this market, which have like very mainstream and catalog products.
I love it. Well, Stan, look at man, from the ProFluence team, you are truly embodying what we think of as an innovator. It's taking all the great tools, it's understanding the market, it's being a student of the game, and really putting a product out there that makes us a little bit better than when we started. So from our side, man, thank you for everything we're doing. If we have folks that are listening, Stan, that want to learn more, that want to get in touch with you and your team, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, so they can reach me out on LinkedIn, or they can check out Rocapine website, which is Rocapine.
Perfect. And we'll make sure that we include that behind here. Stan, we look forward to learning more and following your guys' incredible journey. We wish you nothing but the best of luck. And if you haven't gone and turned your phone into an optimized wellness machine, be sure to follow after this podcast, and please do so. Stan, hope you have a great day, man. We'll talk soon.
Thanks a lot, Scott. Have a good day. Bye.